Welcome to No Borders with Brian and Carrie. Today what we are discussing is how we plan our yearly budget for full-time travel. This is a hot topic right now, mainly because we are closing out 2024, heading into 2025, and it's time to figure out what that budget's going to be.
Yeah, recently we've gotten this question quite a bit. It seems like we don't hear this question, and all of a sudden we've gotten it maybe 15 times in the last week. Probably because we're coming up on 2025. How do you budget for the next year? Where do you start?
Yeah, and you know, there is a lot that goes into planning full-time travel, but the number one part and the most important part is that budget, because without knowing what your budget is or what you have for next year to spend, what you're comfortable spending, where do you even start? You know, you need to be able to know where you can go. Well, a lot of that is based off of what your budget's gonna be.
So first things first, before you decide to go anywhere, you got to figure out how much money you have now and how much money you may have moving forward on some of those revenue streams that you may have coming in.
Right, and for a lot of people this varies every year. You know, if you have a set amount, which is more kind of how we have kind of a set amount that each year, so we have a more general idea what our budget is, but if you're one of those that your revenue stream changes a bit, maybe you have a rental and the rent's going up or whatever those things are, but a lot of people it's really just looking at what your investments are, what your pension, what money you're getting from that, or maybe you're getting Social Security and you can include that in your budget as well.
Yeah, so figure all that out, come up with a comfortable amount you're willing to spend, because there's a difference in how much you have or have coming in and how much you're willing to spend. That's kind of where we're at a lot of the time. Well, we could afford it, but are we willing to? And the answer is usually no, because we're into this for the long term. So come up with a figure that you're comfortable spending, that you can live with.
Right, and the other thing that you want to make sure that you are looking at or planning for is any of those unexpected. We can all plan.
That's a big one.
Yeah, we can all plan what the year is going to look like, but there's a lot that can go on during that year, either privately or in your travels, that can really adjust things. So you kind of want to have or plan for some wiggle room in that as well.
Plan for something to go wrong. There's nothing wrong with planning for something to go wrong. That's where that emergency fund that we've talked about in the past comes into play. If you need to draw off that, you've got it to draw off of. So kind of build in that expectation that something could go wrong.
Yeah, it's always better to be on the side of being prepared. Now, our biggest cost in our traveling is accommodations. I know we've mentioned this before, but this is the area where you really have to figure out how much you want to put each month towards this budget. And you know, for us, we try and stay around $1,300 to $1,500, which is very different than how we started. That has been adjusted. We started with $900, found very quickly that that was not going to suffice for what we needed for our travels. But that budget for us, $1,300 to $1,500, also includes the time that we're home. So we aren't spending that money while we're home, so that $1,300 to $1,500 average gets spread out the entire year. So it gives us a little bit more on the road when we're traveling.
And that's back to where that flexibility comes in. You can maybe stretch that a little bit more, maybe stay home for an extra week, maybe an extra 2 weeks, something like that to balance that out. One of the key things that we have started doing is house sitting. If you've watched our channel, you know that we're big on this. And the reason we're big on it is because we like to stay in nice places.
Yeah.
And if we can spread that out over the course of the year, we can maybe spend $2,000 on accommodations in a certain location. Now, when I say we like to stay in nice locations, I mean we like to be comfortable to a point where, you know, we're not living high on the hog. I'll just put it to you that way. But that house sitting really comes into play.
Yeah, and when Brian is saying that we say, oh, well, maybe we will just stay home for an extra week or two, it's not necessarily because we're crashing on somebody's couch. We are house sitting somewhere. But that is the easiest location and most convenient location for us to find our house sits. And so when we do have something that we want to go do that we know is going to be a lot more expensive, one way for us to very much be able to justify that, and actually Dublin was the best example of that, We knew we wanted to go to Dublin, incredibly expensive. So we just extended our time at home for about a week and a half, which in all reality pretty much paid for our time in Dublin.
Yeah, it saved us that week and a half, 2 weeks of rent that we might have been paying someplace else. So those accommodations, you can really make your budget go a lot further if you start doing some of those house sits.
Yeah. Now also in our travels, one of the things that we have recently kind of changed is that we do move a little bit quicker than we were moving because we don't get that month-long discount. And so for the first, say, 2 months of our 3 months out traveling, we move a little bit quicker, but then that last month is always a longer stay. It's usually a month long. Now, if you are somebody who's not needing to move as quick as we are trying to get content for YouTube, then you can do those month-long stays and you're probably going to be able to save a lot of money on accommodations.
Yeah, you get the month-long discount. We used to do that quite a bit, but it became difficult for us to do what we're doing right now, coming up with material on the ground. So we're moving a little bit quicker now, but we know we can make up for it later. The next biggest cost is going to be your airfare. Coming home, if you come home 3 times a year like we do, that does add up.
It really does.
It does add up.
We have a budget that we set for the year for our long haul flights, because those are our most expensive flights. We set a budget of $3,000 per person for those flights. We did up that from, we were at around $2,200 to $2,500 was our budget, but now that we are going home 3 times a year, we had to up it up to $3,000. We're hoping to come in below that, but once again, we always try and budget a little bit high because we would certainly rather come below it than go over. So yeah,
if you come in below your budget, then you can take that leftover money and you can go spend it on something.
Or put it towards next year.
Maybe.
Put it towards next year.
Probably a better idea.
Yeah, but there's, one of the ways that you are going to, you have your budget and you also kind of know those main long haul flights you're going to be doing. So going home, say to see family. So you can then watch online for those discounts and bargains and be able to catch those tickets when they're at a really good price and get those tickets. We don't necessarily do that with our hopper flights so much because those kind of stay about the same price, but those long haul, if you get them ahead of time, you can save a lot.
Yeah, so to rehash a little bit, start with your accommodations, your most expensive, and then move on to your flights. Decide what you're willing to spend on each of those.
Next, we are usually now to the point where we're going to start looking at where do we want to go this next year. Now, we don't plan out an entire year in advance, but we do need to have some general idea of some of the things that we'd like to go see and do. As an example, this next year coming up, our kind of most expensive part of the year is going to be hitting right at the very beginning of the year. So that was kind of the key one. The most expensive one is the one that you really kind of want to know what you're willing to spend on that.
So selecting regions with affordable accommodations, affordable eating out, just affordable in general is key. So we're gonna spend that money early in the year, and then we're gonna figure out where we're gonna go after that. Now, Southeast Asia is always more affordable than really the rest of the world, but you gotta get there. So that's where you have to balance out that plane ticket to what you're gonna save on accommodations. A lot of times it balances out pretty good where you can spend that extra money on the plane ticket, but save over here. So no matter even if you do break your flight budget of $3,000, you're going to come in well under on your accommodations. So you can kind of take from one and add it to the other.
Yeah, and I know we talk about flights and stuff. One of the, I spend a ton of time researching for flights and bargains and everything, but there is kind of a newer tool out there that I was always like, nope, I can do it myself. But we started using this and we would highly recommend it because it really is going to save us a lot of money on our flights without having to do all the legwork. So check it out. The link is down below if you're interested at all. I was really surprised at how much I'm really loving it.
Well, it's not only a money savings thing, but this is a lot of work traveling around the world, which you'll soon find out because you're going to get out there and do it. If you don't have to go searching for these flights, they just come to you, it can be a lot easier. Time is money.
Time is money.
Time is money.
One thing that we recently started doing is that there's a lot of things that we would like to go see and do, but they are expensive. Obviously, we cannot put them all in 1 year or even in a couple years, and so we have agreed that we will do one thing per year. And so that's why this upcoming year, we are going to have our big experience at the very beginning of the year, and then we have some other things too that are going to be mixed in to that same 3 months.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of those must-see experiences. So if you're going to a region, you're going to be in the area, and there's key things you want to see and do, or that everybody's like, you got to do this.
Gotta do it.
You just got to do it. And so you want to make sure you're not missing out on those experiences, and you can absolutely just balance your year out.
You really can. Now, we've been accused of doing this in the past. I think my own daughter accused us of doing it, you know, where you go to a place and you get a great accommodation and then you just hang out and stay there and you don't really do anything else. We don't do that either, but we do, I would say, cut back on certain excursions and decide not to do certain things because we want to stay within that budget. Well, we're going to blow that budget out of the water the first 3 months of the year.
Yeah.
Those 3 months we're going to blow out of the water.
Right.
We're going to make up for it later.
Yes.
But we're going to take advantage of what we've got, and what we've got is great wine. We're going to be in our wine region. We're not going to pass it up. The Iguazu Falls.
Iguazu Falls.
Iguazu Falls. I'm going to have to get that down before we get to that video, I'll tell you. Iguazu Falls, Santiago, Buenos Aires, Machu Picchu,
Yeah.
all these places we're going to go do. Now, we're not going to do the Galapagos Islands, for example, because that's going to have to be another time.
Different trip.
Different trip.
Yeah.
So we do try and stay within a parameter of what we can afford, but we are going to go for it.
Yeah, and I think that you do have to make sure that when you're looking at the areas you're going to travel to, like Brian is saying, sometimes people say to us, you didn't go do this, you didn't go do that. Very much majority of the time, it has nothing to do with what the cost of it was. We weren't interested, you know, and so to you, you may be interested. It may top your list, and you're going to make sure that you work that into your budget. But for us, we've seen a lot of castles. We have gone to a lot of places that it's like, okay, you know, and a lot of these excursions, we look at them and it's like, we'll look at each other and be like, I don't know, do you really want to go? It doesn't interest us. That may shock some people, but you're going to figure out your style of travel. You're going to figure out the things that you want to make sure that you work into your budget. But make sure that you are allocating enough money for those locations that are going to have those exciting things to do.
Right, because I'll tell you right now, once you get out there and you want to do this and you want to do this and you want to do this, you didn't know this was even an option, but here it is. Now you're spending that money that you don't have. Don't get caught in that trap.
Another key tip, though, that we would give you as you are planning these locations and you are planning and you're going to have all these experiences you might want to go and do, that maybe check at the off-peak season, you know? Check those off times, because you're going to have lower accommodation costs, you're going to have lower crowds, you're not going to be fighting all of that. A lot of time the temperatures aren't going to be as hot. They may even be on the cooler side, so pack a jacket, or it may rain a little, but that's okay. You know, if it's going to save you a lot of money, but you still get to go enjoy the experience,
Right.
that might be worth it for you.
Now this is something that we've kind of made the adjustment on. Out of the gate, we're going to the beaches. We're going to the warm weather. We're going to chase the sun around the world. We don't do that anymore.
No,
We don't do that anymore because, for a few reasons, it's expensive.
it is.
We like the changing of the seasons. Now we can complain about it middle of the winter in the Pacific Northwest, but we do like spring, summer, fall, and winter. And when you're chasing the sun around, you don't get that. So we've kind of adapted and changed the way we do things for those reasons alone. But yeah, getting into those hot seasons and those big crowds, it's not very much fun. Now, if you get out there, you're 6 months down the road and you're starting to run out of money, or at least you're starting to push that budget into boundaries that you weren't expecting for whatever reason. You did too many excursions or something. There are ways that you can curve it back and adjust. And that's eating like a local, getting out of the tourist spots, get into those mom and pop backstreet restaurants that the food's a lot cheaper and probably a lot better in a lot of cases.
It usually is.
Yeah.
And also just cooking in. Go to the local market and see what the popular things or what is custom to eat there. That's a lot of fun, because every market that we go into is completely different as far as the fruits and vegetables that they
Right.
have. And so it's fun to go and get that, create your meals at home. That is definitely a way that you can save some money. But yeah, getting off that beaten path a little bit has been where we have found some of the best restaurants that we've gone to.
Yeah, now Carrie's a great cook, and she does have a cookbook coming out
No, I don't.
that we're going to sell
No.
right here on YouTube.
Not gonna happen.
For anybody that wants to buy her cookbook. They're $199.99 each, so save your money.
Not going to happen.
Not
Not
gonna
even
happen.
a thing. Yeah. So, but there are, there's cutting back in those areas, but there's also so many other areas, and that is one of the things that we absolutely love with full-time travel is that sometimes we'll be like, okay, our budget has gotten really high, or what we've spent so far in the year has gotten really high. It never really stresses us out that much because there's always places in the world that you can go that you're going to be able to save some money. So like Brian said, Southeast Asia, that's always a great place that you can go ahead and cut some costs backwards. So there are places, if you have extra time during the year, you've exceeded quite a ways up, there's places you can go.
And we're not just saying there's places you can go. These places are also pretty cool.
They're amazing.
That you want to go to anyway. So you may as well kind of balance that out. Inexpensive place, a little more expensive. Inexpensive, a little more expensive, and you'll stay under budget.
Yeah, we used to always just kind of keep it mid-range through the entire year, and we kind of learned that we were missing out on some of those places that we really want to go to, and the way to do that was to very much balance it out. Go to those places that are a little more expensive, and then follow it up with a place that's a lot less expensive.
Go to Spain, spend some money, then hop over to Albania, save some money.
Plus, when you're in a location, make sure that you're taking advantage of the free things there to do as well. There is always festivals going on. There is always free days to maybe get into the museums or the main kind of, tourist attraction places. A lot of time there's a free day per month or sometimes a free day per week. Look into those kinds of things, and then also make sure that you just right out the gate get comfortable with the public transportation, hop onto that bus, figure it out right away, because it's going to save you a lot if you're somebody who typically might just call a taxi or an Uber.
So now you're on track, you're doing great, you're not overspending. Make sure you allow yourself some room to make adjustments and pivot on the fly. There might be something you want to go do that you weren't expecting. There might be something you can't do that you were expecting. That's okay. You're traveling the world now, you can come back and do that later.
Yeah, and one of the things, the areas where we are learning very much, we used to be completely planned out. When we started, and we've had a lot of people ask, like, how far out do you plan? I get it. It's kind of uncomfortable to just hit the road running and you don't really know, but if you had all those reservations in place, it just feels more comfortable. You're going to be able to find a place to stay, no problem. You'll figure it out when you're on the road. Having a time period where you don't have everything planned out gives you that ability, like Brian said, to pivot and to go another direction. And a really great example of that would be, for instance, if you're in a location and you've already planned out the next 2 months and they're lined up and you have paid for reservations. Say you get to location and you love it and you want to stay longer. Say it's super affordable, but you've already figured out your time. So make sure that you've allowed that time to be flexible.
Yeah, and also make sure you don't go and book a place for 2 months before you get there, because you might find it's not what you expected. Now you've got this money that you've already spent or you're already committed to. So make sure you're kind of walking the balance beam a little bit. So that's why we would suggest not walking that balance beam for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Just short balance beam acts.
Right, and there's ways to do that. Make sure that you are doing rentals that are refundable, or that you haven't even paid anything up front. You're just making a reservation. A lot of people are going to say that those are hard to come by. They're not really that hard to come by. You just have to be a little more selective, and you maybe don't have the masses of places to choose from, but it's worth it in the end when you have that flexibility to cancel if you need to. Now, the final step for us is just reviewing and keeping that balance or that budget in check for the entire year. You know, just because you've set it at the beginning of the year, you don't just kind of set it, forget it kind of thing. It is something we are watching monthly. We keep track of our budget I mean, we have our end month budget, but then weekly, actually daily, I'm entering in what we spend at a grocery store, or if we go out and get a beer, all of that money is entered in. Just keep on track of it, because knowing is power. If you don't know, and then at the end of the month, or say 2 months went by, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, we should take a look at that budget, and you've gotten so far off track, it's hard to kind of rein it in.
Yeah, it is hard to rein it in, especially when you're having such a great time. Time flies, money can fly too, so make sure you're staying on top of it.
Yeah, so, well, we hope that this kind of helps you as you're figuring out as 2025 is approaching, especially if you're going to be hitting the road. If you have any additional questions on budgeting and how we kind of do it, ask them down in the comments below, and we'll try and get those answered. But yeah, I mean, we're excited for 2025. We're excited every day.
We're excited all the time.
Yeah, but we are very much excited when we have that new year coming up that we're looking forward to. It's kind of a reset time. If you kind of got a little off track the last year, you get to get back on track this next year. So yeah, we're excited.
Yeah, this is nothing that we came up with on day one, and we went with it, and here we are at day 1,000, and we're still doing the same thing. No, not at all. We've changed it up several times. We're learning as we go, and this is how we've decided to do it, and we think it's working for us now.
Yeah.
We think we got it all figured out. We've got this all figured out.
A couple months.
Exactly.
We'll change it up again. All right, well, if you'd like to find us on other social networks, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Brian and Carrie. And you can also find us on YouTube if you're listening to us on a podcast. You can also find us on our website at brianandcarrietravels.com.
You can find us all over the place.
You can find us all over the place.
Thank you for watching. We very much appreciate it. Or listening.
Yes.
If you're listening to us on a podcast. You're great. We love you. We'll see you next time. Cheers.